Welcome to the Rise to the Challenge podcast. Joining today, she's the executive producer at JDS Studios, majority owner of JDS Video and Media Production, and the founder of the JDS Creative Academy. It's Diane Strand. How are you doing today, Diane?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful. Thank you, Alex, for having me here today.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. We're excited to talk about your rise to the challenge. What we like to do with our guests is go right to the beginning. Talk about where you're from and what were you involved in growing up?
Oh, well, my journey is long that kind of got me to this place. My adolescence were spent a lot in the Midwest, and then I hit California, Southern California in my mid-teens. And I think at that time, the Hollywood lights were kind of shining really bright on me. And it lured me up to Hollywood not long after I graduated high school and did a couple of years at a community college, and I started my acting career. And I was doing some acting, but my writing started really taking off, and I sold a screenplay. And then I wanted to kind of go along with that screenplay. I thought, why not? I wrote it, I could produce it. Well, Showtime had other thoughts in mind, and they didn't take me along with my script. And one of the reasons was at that time was that I didn't have a college degree. I only had an AA degree. And so I figured I was never going to hear that again. And I went back to Cal State Northridge, and I finished my degree, and I got my bachelor's degree in radio, television, and film, and started working in the entertainment industry. And I had a nice successful career. I worked on shows like Friends and General Hospital and Veronica's Closet, built the high def control room at Staples Center, and just pursued my career, worked a lot in reality television. And that's when my husband and I, he's a professional actor, we kind of looked at each other. We had a 3-year-old, and we had a nanny raising them, and decided that we had to make some changes. So we decided to jump off and be entrepreneurs. And we left the LA Hollywood area, came about 70 miles south, and launched our video production business, and did corporate video and marketing and communications for the next 7-10 years. And my husband's acting itch kind of started up, where he was wanting to do something with that. And so we thought he would start teaching, and we opened the actor studio. And with that, we had all these young adolescents and even young adults who came out. And so we tapped back into some connections that we had in the LA market, and brought some agents in, launched some careers in the entertainment industry. And then through that, I started finding, the actor studio kind of started, find a need, fill a need. And as people were coming, it's like, well, yeah, I love the acting, but I want to be a writer, or I want to learn how to do video production, or I want to do this. Can you help me? Can you train me? And, I started putting on way too many hats, and decided that, I would get a group of people together, and we founded a nonprofit. And we had a great board of industry professionals who all work in the industry and had connections. And we started teaching all different kinds of classes, and getting involved in the community and different things that you do. I think that is so important, to be into the community. That keeps your finger on the pulse of what's kind of going on. And do you want to rise to a new challenge and do those things? You got to know what the community's thinking and what they're feeling. And so we started pulling these classes together, making it great for homeschool kids, traditional school kids, and being involved in that community. Like I said, I started working a lot in workforce development and being on boards and in economic development. And I met an individual who had some barriers to finding their dream. And I was like, well, that shouldn't be the case. I got to figure out how to break down this barrier. And so in meeting this individual, had a love for audio and had some raw skill, just needed a little training, a little hands-on. He did have some learning challenges, where you just sit down and read a book was not the best way for him to learn. He had to have his hands on it and touch it and move it and figure out, when I do it this way, why it doesn't work, and when I do it that way, it works better. And I found a real solution to putting people who maybe had some challenges to be able to teach them, as well as being able to provide some opportunities. And I built and wrote a curriculum for adults with developmental disabilities to learn video production. And, what I've realized by working with these individuals is they have no problem learning the job, doing the job, succeeding with high quality work in the job. Their challenge is getting the job. So I have found ways to help them work through some of those social issues, give them the training that they need. So we're our own little got me, here to where I am. And, I kind of consider that I my job is to make dreams come true. And I do that by providing hope, which is helping one person every day.
Backtracking a little bit, when you were growing up in the Midwest, was the lifestyle of being actress, the Hollywood lights and all that, was that ever an option that was going through your mind, or was there a different direction that you were wanting to go before you going out to California?
Well, I would like to say that I had my life all figured out in, my early teens, but I don't think that I did. I always had a passion for the arts. That was always something that rang true with me. I am someone who even struggles with a little dyslexia. So reading was very tough for me growing up and learning that. And it was acting that really taught me how to read. I was in second grade and we were doing a play that was all about the American Revolution or something like that. And I wanted to play Betsy Ross. And I was not a strong reader in second grade. And so I worked really, really hard to be able to present in that audition. And I got the role. And then I memorized all the lines and it increased my reading skills. It made them stronger. And that's a benefit of acting, is leadership skills, self-confidence, reading skills, understanding the context and the meaning of words in another way. And that was a big changer for me. Now, I don't know that I was able to go, oh, I'm going to go do this as an adult when I was, in my early teens, but I always gravitated in school. I always did the plays. I always did productions. I loved art class. Those were the classes that, they would always say, oh, Diane's so creative and she does all these great things. If we could only get her to do her homework. But yeah, so I think it definitely shows in my early years. I don't know that I was, quite figuring it all out yet, but there's definitely, when I look back, there's that saying, I think Steve Jobs said it best, where you can't connect the dots looking forward, you can only connect them looking back. And now that I see my path that got me to here, I can definitely connect those dots.
Was there anyone in that industry that you kind of looked up to, like, ooh, I would like to follow in their footstep or be like them in the industry?
Lucille Ball. She was definitely somebody. As young, I was like, I wanted to live Lucille Ball's life. I loved the show. She was such, and not only because she's funny and she's Lucille Ball and you watch her on TV doing all this wacky kind of stuff, she was a business lady. And she was really the power behind the Desilu productions. It was Lucille Ball. And I think I kind of started to figure that out somewhere in my late teens. I did a research project on Lucille Ball, and I just got this huge admiration for her. So she was definitely one. Other than that, definitely very starstruck. And, I'm a typical girl in my early teens who, I watched all the boys and the hot actors and those kind of things. But, I'm definitely, I get that right and that left brain kind of going at the same time, so I have that creative energy, but at the same time, I have that analytical brain. So, I definitely had to balance the two and figure out how to drive that through.
Was it a family decision to move to California, or what brought you to California from moving from the Midwest?
That was definitely a family decision. I didn't have a whole lot to say about that. I'll never forget the day my parents told me we were moving to California. I was a freshman in high school, And it was one of those things, I laugh about it now because I even tell my kids that the house that I live in now is the longest I ever lived in any one place. And I've now been there 12 years, because every 3 to 5 years as a child, or even as a young adult, I always moved, whether it be a change an apartment or change a house or move. And my parents moved a lot. My dad was climbing the corporate ladder, and he definitely moved us. I was born in Michigan. Then we went to Ohio and Indiana and Kentucky. And we were in Kentucky, and I'd been there about 3 years and settling into high school, and everything was going great. And I'll never forget, I came home and my dad threw out something. So if there's anywhere in the US that you could live, where would it be? Right. And he's like, here's a map. You pick it out. You tell me where it is that you want to be. And I'm like, oh yeah, right, Dad. Oh, I don't know. California, like right down the street from Disneyland. And he went, done. And I went, what? And I'm like, yep, we're moving to California. And that's exactly what he did. I ended up living like 6 miles from Disneyland when we moved to California.
And you had to be the luckiest kid that you could almost just walk to Disneyland every day.
Yes, I wouldn't change it for the world now. But I can't say that I had those same feelings, at the time. It was definitely a very traumatic move for me, at 14, upheavaling my life and trying to reestablish in, Orange County, California at that time, talk about life in the fast lane. I thought, I was pretty progressive, but, coming out here, not knowing what I was getting myself into. But, I hit some bumps along the way, but I figured it out.
You talked about how you were moving so much. Were you ever worried about making friends or keeping those, knowing that, oh, I might be moving in a couple years and I won't see them ever again?
Well, like I don't know that I had those conscious thoughts, especially moving younger. Moving when I was in high school, as I said, that was pretty traumatic for me because I had a BFF that thankfully she's still my BFF today. And this was pre-Facebook, pre-cell phones, all of that kind of stuff. And we managed to stay friends and keep that relationship thriving for 40 years now. So, I'm very, very grateful. She was actually just out here in California in June visiting for a week. So, I'm the godmother to her parents. She's the godmother to my parents, her kids, my kids, those kinds of things. So, consciously, it was definitely always huge. I don't think before I got to Kentucky, I quite knew that moving all the time meant I wasn't going to see people or that it was traumatic. But that one was traumatic. And it definitely, I have to say, it probably affected me for, my good, 2 or 3 years here in California like that. When I came out here, I was supposed to be starting my sophomore year in high school, and schools are much better in the East than they were in California at that time. And my credits threw me up to already being a junior, and that's all I wanted. How fast can I get out of high school and start my life? Because I felt like my life was back in Kentucky at that point. And that was my goal. How do I finish high school? And at that point, I'll go back to college. I'll go back to Kentucky. That isn't what happened, but those next couple of years were, a little shaky. I probably did some things I shouldn't have done and got involved with people I shouldn't have gotten involved in and learned some hard lessons. But at the same time, I wouldn't be who I am today if those experiences hadn't made me who I am. And thankfully, I, didn't go down in a crashing flame at that time.
When you talk about those decisions, if you were living in the Midwest, do you think you would have partake in those decisions that you kind of thought, oh, maybe they're not right? Or was it just the California lifestyle that was a complete change?
No, growing up in the late 70s, early 80s, the things we know today, we didn't know then. So, I was definitely a social butterfly, and went places I probably shouldn't have gone, or partaked in things I shouldn't have partaked in, or but at the, like, I still go back. I have no regrets, as far as that goes. I learned, and hey, I'm a better mom for it today. My kids can't get by on me what I can get by on my parents. As far as that goes. And I definitely think, yes, moving to California, it was life in the fast lane, and it probably took me places that maybe I wouldn't have experienced had we stayed where we were. But I think it made me stronger. It made me tougher, and it made me, and I even think that way as an adult or parent, in that kind of sense, that there are some things that you need to experience when you can still be in a safe zone, once you kind of turn 18, 19, 20, and you do things that could land you in a lot of trouble, but if you, as a juvenile, as long as, they're, obviously you can do things that can land you in a lot of trouble as a juvenile, but when it's just kind of teenage angst stuff and those kinds of things, those are sometimes some safer places to let some of those play out, because, instead of, bouncing yourself into some real trouble like you could when you're all on your own, you kind of bounce back to your parents' little safe hub, in that sense. So I definitely think there are things that should be experienced in certain aspects of your life, figure out who you are. But I don't think that those experiences are absolutely necessary in the severity that they could go down. And I think today, like I said, things just aren't today the way they were then. I mean, sitting around at 16, 17 and having a few beers with your friends was more socially acceptable in the fact of a party situation. Now, you wouldn't do it with other adults around or anything, but that was more, but now if you're at a party and there's a lot of drinking going on, there's a problem, so, in that dichotomy, there's just, it's just different, 35 years later than it was then.
Well, and something you mentioned is back then there was no Instagram, Facebook, social media presence, and now you're seeing it all over social media and public perception, and that's why if things like that happen, it's like, this is a problem. But people always use the excuse, well, they do it, or I saw a video that they were okay after they did that. And I think it's totally the difference of times. You mentioned that about getting through high school fast. Did you know the next direction after you graduate high school, or you just wanted to enjoy the experience and go on different paths and try different things?
I think I had a path much more designed for myself before we moved to California. I had visions of going to U of K when I entered my freshman year in high school back in Kentucky. And then moving to California, I think, derailed a lot of that. And it was just, how do I get out of high school, and then what's next for me? I don't think I initially figured out that the entertainment industry was what's next for me coming out of high school. I do have to say that if it wasn't for my connection to the arts when I was on that fast track to finish high school, if it wasn't for wanting to be in the play or wanting to be a part of the drama club in high school, I probably would not have finished high school, as far as that goes, because I had to keep my grades up to be in the play. I had to not ditch school enough so I didn't get kicked out, So it was because of that love for the arts or being in the play or part of that, that made the rest of my life still succeed, because I had to keep that up to make this happen. I came out once I graduated. I did not go right off into junior college. I thought I had all the answers and needed to, go out and live on my own and figure it all out. And, I was trying to even figure out how to get back to Kentucky, maybe a little bit, and what was that going to look like. But, I started to grow up, I started to mature, had to get a job, I had to figure it out. I'm like, well, this isn't the job that I want for the rest of my life. How do I make that better? And then it's like, oh, maybe I have to go back to school, So that's kind of where, some of those things started to click, click, click in my head, as I went from, temp agency to temp agency, or waiting tables or this or that, and trying to figure it out for a couple of years after I bounced around after high school. But then I figured out, school and education was the way. And I went to Fullerton Community College and I got my AA degree. And then I thought, oh, that's it. I got my AA degree. I'm set. I'm happy. Moved up to LA. I'm pursuing my career. I was an actor, but then I started writing and finding other things. And then again, once again, I needed more education. So I had to go back and finish that education. And since then, I, haven't looked back, and I've just been moving, 100 miles an hour, just making things happen. But I still think education is the key. There are different ways to get that education, and that's what I do for a living now, is I provide those different ways to get your education. And if you want to do what it is that I do, you want to do video production, journalism, radio, you want to be on stage, you want to be in a play, you want to be a director, you want to be a camera operator, an editor, an actor, any of those kinds of things, I can help you find that dream and train you for that dream and make it come true in a hands-on type of experience. And that's what I found works best, in learning, is when you can touch something and figure out that, this paperclip works best this way. When you do it, if I just try to explain a paperclip to someone, they're like, well, does it grab like that? Or does it do this? Or, all the different things. And it's like, no, it's not a clip. It's a paperclip. It's this, but you want to know what a paperclip is? Pick it up and touch it. And that's kind of, that's my philosophy, and that's how I kind of teach and train. And you want to know how to work a camera? Turn the camera on, and what do you see? And is it in focus? Well, no, we got to make it in focus. And how do you, and do they look like they're sitting way down here? Are they up here? And how do you present yourself and put yourself out there so you fill a frame? And those are things that we teach. And but if I just tried to talk about the lower thirds, or the, being in the 2/3 of the top, for somebody who can't visualize that without seeing it or touching it, it makes for a challenge.
When you were in LA being an actress, is there a role that you enjoyed doing, or do you have a favorite role that you've had?
Well, I loved theater. I played one of my most fun roles to play was Veruca Salt in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, because that is a little bit of my personality. I want it now. So that was a very fun role to play on stage. I did a lot of commercials. I didn't have the big role that I could say, oh, go find me on this. Yeah. If that would have happened, I may not be the producer that I am today. So, I can't say that, I was able to, make my mark as an actress. I worked, I made money, but I never became a household name. And, I did some smaller commercials. One of my favorite commercials was actually doing a Frosted Flakes commercial. I got paid the most money for that, and I got to work with Tony the Tiger. So, he was like a fan, and in the commercial that you see, he's animated, but when you act with him, it's a dude in a suit.
Do you ever kind of wish that you had those bigger roles, or maybe took a bigger risk being an actress, or like how a lot of things you're saying, that everything happened for a reason and you grew from every opportunity because it got you to the next step, or something that you are passionate about doing?
No, I don't think that I wish that that big role ever came along, because I love the life that I live now. And, while I like a lot of attention, I will say that, I like being in control more. So being an executive producer allows me to really be in that driver's seat and in that control position. So I do like that role a lot better. I really like writing, and that's much more on the producing side. I'm not one to sit and stare at a blank page and just like, concept and here it goes. That's not the kind of writer that I am. I'm much more think of an idea, start talking about it, get some ideas on paper, then I can start writing and editing and doing that. I'm in the process of writing a book right now. And so I do a lot of yeah into my phone and just trying to tell stories and do that. And then I will go back and start organizing and putting it all together. But I'm working with a mentor because I'm not a writer by instinct or trait where I can just sit down. It's just much more creativity that kind of enhances. I always say that, I'm a spin artist. I do really well in the marketing. So if you give me, one sentence, the cat ran up the tree, I'm going to say, oh, the cat with the orange and gray stripes took a flying leap and clawed into the tree and then slowly made its way to the top as we watched the branches whistle in the wind and glide back and forth as the cat came sailing out and landed on all four legs, all four paws in the yard. I take that one little sentence and I spin it and blow it up. That's probably one of my talents.
You talked about you worked on some big shows. What were you doing anything behind the scenes, or what were you doing to be involved with those shows?
Well, Friends was one of my first jobs out of college, and I came in as a production assistant, but I already had a lot of experience at that time. So I got kind of moved up pretty quickly, and I went from production assistant into a production coordinator position. And then I moved into an associate producer position. But all of those positions were in the office. They were not on set. I mean, I would go to set to bring things back and forth, but I worked in the office. That's where I started learning a lot about line producing, money, what it costs to run the show, what you need to produce those shows. So I worked a lot in the line producing side of it, and that was on Friends. My internship was with General Hospital, and I did a lot of day work with General Hospital as a day producer, which was just day work. They didn't have anything full time, so I had to kind of grow beyond that. I always say that, which was my dream job. I am a soap opera watcher. I love General Hospital. I still watch it to this day. The only time I think I didn't watch it was when I worked there, because I had the scripts 2 weeks in advance, so I could just read and I knew what was going on. But they could only, I started there as an intern, and then they brought me in as a day hire, but it wasn't just consistent enough to be able to make all my bills work at that time. So I had to go find something else. And I often say, what happens when your dream job is your first job? Because that's kind of what happened to me. That was my dream job, and I got it as an internship, and then I was a day hire, and I worked, and I'm still friends with a lot of the cast and crew, but I couldn't stay there. There wasn't, it wasn't enough to keep making my mark and moving on. It would have taken a really long time. And it's interesting because some of the people who were there with me then that are still there now, they were in different, I was already when I was working coming out, I was already married, and I already was trying to, start life on my own at that point, and a lot of those that are still there, they lived at home with their parents, and they didn't have to pay their bills, and they could work for $100 a day, 1 or 2 days a week, and wait, and some of them are still there, and now they are staff, and they're in like Flynn, but I couldn't, that wasn't my career pathway. I had to, I, can't say I did so bad. I went from General Hospital to Friends, so
Well, I was going to ask, did you prefer being on working at General Hospital set or working for Friends? But it sounds like General Hospital was the way, because you said you just love soap operas and all that.
That was my dream job, and every day, I'd walk down the hall and I'd get to see the people that I had been watching on TV since I was, in 5th or 6th grade. I had a babysitter who got me into it way back when. But, it's interesting though. The job itself, I enjoyed the job at Friends better than the job at General Hospital. But I enjoyed the creativity at General Hospital because I didn't get to be very creative at Friends. It was all numbers. And
with your media and video production company, working those two different types of jobs at General Hospital and Friends, do you think it made you a better entrepreneur, that you're able to help those people who want to do similar roles that you experienced?
I'm able to provide advice for sure, and be able to provide pathway opportunities for people. Like, if this is your pathway, this would be good steps for you to take to build that resume to get in that door this way. So it definitely, provided me the knowledge as far as that goes. So kind of leading back to, the question, which is the creativity that came through working at General Hospital, showed me the difference because General Hospital didn't have the total analytical side to it. That was all run through ABC. Everybody at General Hospital was creative. You're an actor, you're a writer, you're a casting director, you're a producer, you're a coordinator, but it's all about the creativity of getting the show out, writing, all of those things. When I worked for Friends, I was part of the production company. So we had, we dealt with all of it. I think working for Friends prepares me more for what I'm doing today than working at General Hospital, but working at General Hospital prepares me more for the creative side of what I do. But that, those two shows aren't, my only shows that I worked on. I would have to say being a part of Disney Channel was really probably my best training ground when I went to Disney, because I was a writer producer for Disney. I worked for the channel. It was all about marketing and promotion of, what's coming up next on Magical World of Disney. You have 2 talking dogs, and then you'd throw in some clips from, the different dogs are talking, and as you're trying to drive people to go watch the show, right? So it was all about the marketing and promotions. And then I was part of the launch for Playhouse Disney when Bear in the Big Blue House and Roly Poly Oly and Out of the Box, I was part of all of those launches with Playhouse Disney. So that was really, truly, I was with Disney for almost 3 years. That was a very big training ground for me that really showed me how you launch shows, how you launch stations, how you market, how you use media to help you market other media. That was really, truly my training ground.
That just sounds like a lot of fun. And when you were naming those TV shows like Out of the Box and Bear in the Big, I'm like, oh man, that was my childhood. Like literally, okay. I just remember if my mom was watching this, she'd be like, we went to one of those live shows where those characters were. And it's just that is basically when they came out with that stuff, it just hit the public and people enjoyed it. And just everything that you named that you were doing, the creativity side of working on Disney, it sounds like your passion came out a lot. Like you enjoyed doing it and you wanted to experience everything because it helped you grow as an individual in that industry.
Absolutely. I still go back to, I wouldn't be able to say then why I was doing it or what I loved, other than I just loved my job, right? And what I did. But I didn't know that it was a training ground for me to do what I'm doing now, or think about it in that way. I just loved what I did. Bear in the Big Blue House holds a very emotional spot for me. I was very much a part of the launch of that show. And I'll never forget when my son, he watched Bear in the Big Blue House. He's probably right about my oldest is right about your age too. And, he got potty trained on the potty train, so yeah, it was all part of that. It holds very fond memories for me, but it's interesting. Now, if you want to talk about the place where I'm more hobnobbed with the who's it's and what's it, that would be at Universal Studios. But that was working for the theme park. So I was with Universal Creative, and at the theme park, when you stand in line and you watch the monitors, you're there for Back to the Future, you're seeing behind the scenes of Back to the Future, or an interview with Michael J. Fox or Christopher Lloyd. Well, I got to go interview Christopher Lloyd and Michael J. Fox, and and work on all of the things that went on. So we built all of the media packages that went, for all the lines. If you're in Back to the Future, or you're in Backdraft, or Jurassic Park, we went and prepared all of the behind the scenes stuff. So when you're standing there in line, the making of and meeting the actors and doing all of that. So that was a lot of fun.
I feel like I'm getting like exclusive, like behind the scenes of when you're just standing there in line, how all this happens. Cause you wonder, like you're standing there and you're hearing like the videos and stories. You're like, how did they do this? Like, where did they, like, how? And it's so fascinating. And that's what I love, is just learning and from my guests. And it's just so fascinating, everything that you've done, because it just shows that you have so much passion for what you do and you love doing it. And people that are listening to this interview, they're going to see it and they're going to say, I'm passionate about the things that I'm doing, and continuing to grow and finding new opportunities and find new ways to innovate, that they're going to follow in that path also. So it's nice to hear.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, it's nice to kind of tell my story, and, and as I, kind of remember some of this stuff, I have to say, this is, I love that you're delving a little bit more into my past and making me think about this stuff, because, most everyone just wants to know about what I'm doing today and how it's all working today, or how I got to where I am today. And a lot of this stuff doesn't even come up. So I'm getting to go a little bit down memory lane. So thank you.
When you made the change to be an entrepreneur, was there a lot of risks in doing that? Were you ever worried, like, what happens if I fail? What happens if this doesn't work? What do I do next? Because you talked about your husband. I don't know if you're married at the same time, but he was an actor. And sometimes actors have a fall where they don't get jobs at certain points. Or was he still finding jobs where it was helping to make that transition into the next step in your career?
No, it was a big risk. It was a big leap of faith that we took. My husband was acting. He was in between gigs, so mostly taking care of our 3-year-old son. I was the majority breadwinner. I was working in reality television, making, 6 figures. And this is back in, the early 2000s, where that was a lot of money then.
Yeah.
And so, I had a really bad day at work, but they were a lot of bad days. Reality television can be very brutal. It definitely, it changed it changed the industry. There's no doubt about it. Reality television changed the industry when it hit in early 2000. Everything started to shift and change, and you could feel it in the industry. I went to work for reality television, but it was such a pace. You know, everything was either you're succeeding or you're failing. There is no in between.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very harsh. And I had a couple of weird days that were going kind of consecutively, you know, kind of things. I was working on Survivor and Big Brother and all of those things, and it was a lot. You know, I'd come home tired, and, you know, last thing I want to do is, I had a 3-year-old at the time. You know, I'm like, I just don't want to go to bed. I want to do bath time and dinner time. And, you know, I got to get up at 6 in the morning and start all over again. So, and that wasn't what I wanted. I mean, I really wanted to be a mom and enjoy those things. So, you know, I was like, do I need to, you know, what do I need to do next? You know, so my husband and I were just talking. He's like, well, what if we sold our house, quit our jobs, moved down to the San Diego area and started our own production company? And I looked at him, I went, are you serious? And he went, yeah. And I went, okay. And it was that simple, you know. But you ask about fear. Every single day I have fear. Every day I wake up and I do something that I have never done before. That is the life of an entrepreneur. So I have fear every day. Is it going to work? Is it not going to work? Am I doing the right thing? Is tomorrow the day I have to go find a real job? You know, those still, even today, you know, I run 3 successful 6-7 figure businesses, but I still wonder if next month I'm living under the freeway. But I think that keeps me hungry. I have that go-getter mentality that, you know, I don't stay in one place long, whether it's comfortable or uncomfortable. You know, I'm always shifting and changing. And, you know, and now the fear is I've got 14 employees. You know, I not only do I have to make enough to make my standard of living, I got to make enough to pay them, you know. So those are consistent fears. But, you know, I have conversations with fear all the time. You know, get in that back seat. You can talk all you want, but you are not driving this car. I am, you know. So I just keep pushing, you know, I just keep pushing forward. You know, sometimes I, you know, let fear, like, oh, maybe I'll not go that way and I'll go this way. And then I'm like, oh, I should have just did it that time when I had it, you know. But those are learning lessons, you know. There were some very dark days in entrepreneurship, you know, the days when I didn't know how I was making, you know, putting food on the table or paying the bills. And okay, is, you know, are we really going and starting to pull out our resume? Do I need to go back up to LA? You know, those were all thoughts, daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. You know, are we still doing this? But, you know, at some point they got a little quieter, they got a little softer. You know, I didn't have to, you know, let those rule my, you know, my next decision, you know. But it definitely took time. You know, we were doing, you know, year 1 through 3, everything was great. Year 3 through 5, it was a little tough. We made it through year 5. You get to 6 or 7, 2008 hit. We went into a recession. What are we doing now? You know, trying to figure it out. You know, I have to say, on the other side, COVID hit, you know. And COVID hit, though, that actually propelled my business. You know, I'm in the world of video. Every live event all of a sudden wanted to be live streamed.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden I could help in that. And people are knocking and banging down my door. I don't care what it costs. I just need to get my event out. Or how do I do this and make this happen for me? So, you know, you got to roll with it, you know. And like I said, it's always something new every day. But at the same time, you know, I thrive on that. You know, when I'm like, oh, I got to do that again. I don't want to do that again. I want something new.
I have to ask, what did you do for Big Brother? Even though, like, right now Big Brother is back up and going, it's been on for so many years. What did you do at Big Brother?
Well, I didn't do anything at Big Brother. We were the production company that supplied all their equipment and built their houses on CBS Radford Studio, that put all the cameras in place and did all of that. And then I crewed it. So all the producers and crew people who were making the cameras move. So that was really what I did. I stood a lot behind, double-sided mirrors, and I'd watch the people. But those were days that I just showed up on set. Most of the time I sat in an office in Burbank and CBS Radford was over in Studio City, 25 minutes away.
When do you still watch it or Survivor and be like, wow, I played a role, even if it was like a small role or something? It's like I was at least part of something, because like even looking at how big Friends or General Hospital is, like being a part of these shows for a small bit and looking at how big of a fan base they have, it's still rewarding in a way.
Right. Of course, those are proud moments that, don't ever come off my resume. Those are definitely feathers in my cap that I'm very proud of, and they were a lot of fun. In the moment of the Hollywoodness, they were a lot of fun. They were a lot of work, and the starstruckness kind of goes away pretty quickly when it's 14-hour days, and someone tells you that you either failed or succeeded. You get over that all really quick. But I have gotten to a point to, people are people, productions are productions. I still watch the shows. I sit there and I'm like, there's things that I catch that I'm like, oh, somebody missed that. But at the same time, I've distanced myself now over the last 17 years from the Hollywoodness again, that now I'm back into just being able to be a fan. I watch and pay more attention to news, ABC, NBC, CBS News, because when they make a mistake, I don't feel so bad about the mistakes that I make now. So, I pay more attention to that and just kind of, be a regular viewer of, entertainment television. But it is fun. My kids, they watch Friends. And in the year that I worked on the show, they know the season that I worked on the show, and they're like, oh, Mom, there's your name.
When you were making or building your production companies, were you ever hoping that your kids followed in your footstep and could be a part of it with you? Or if they take a different path, you're still happy no matter what?
Well, that's a touchy subject because my business is JDS. JDS stands for the initials of my 3 children.
Oh.
So they are very interested. Growing up, my oldest, he wasn't an actor or a performer. He didn't like that side. Although the one time he did act, my husband and I are like, oh my gosh, he's probably the most talented out of the family. But he's into the computer aspect. So growing up, he did all the lights and the sound for the plays. So he does have a huge interest. He's now trying to figure out life as a young adult in his 20s, and has a little bit of interest, but he has a job, so he's kind of doing his own thing. My other 2 children, my youngest is definitely very interested in the arts, and she is at the studio all the time. She's in musical theater. She does our plays and our productions, and she has my mother-in-law's songbird voice, and she's definitely has the gift if she chooses to use it. My middle son, he does work for us. So he has a part-time job here, mostly in the facilities aspect, but he does all the plays and stuff like that. But now he's starting to move into like this summer, because he's 17, he's going into his senior year. He was the assistant director of the summer camp program. Instead of being in the play, he was directing it. So they're taking on other roles. I I have a good 10, 15 years left in me at this point, at least until my daughter, my youngest, figures out what she's doing. So, we'll see if it comes back around. That was part of the reason why we even launched the nonprofit, as a nonprofit and not even as a for-profit, because I wanted to build something that I could walk away from at some point and it can still exist. So that was really where the idea of the nonprofit came, because that could be something that could be that would have its longevity. The video production or the actor studio, we're working on ways to extend that and bring more life to it, whether or not we're in it. But, that's by mine and my husband's touch has made that business a success. And so, if we're not touching it, will the client still want to work with just someone we told how to touch it instead of us touching it? So.
When did you start realizing that you wanted to start writing the book? You talked about you had a passion for writing, and were you continuing to write before you had the idea of writing the book?
Yes, and no, yes. So, I mean, that's my short little answer. Writing a book, I have to say, has always been something that, that would be great to write a book. I never thought it was something that I could actually ever really do. As I said, I can't stare at a blank page and go, in the whale of the body of the mouth, and just start writing. So it was something, especially over the last probably 5 to 7 years, my husband and I have been talking about writing a book on how to break into the entertainment industry as an actor. And he is the teacher. So we've always said, especially when it comes to the actor studio, he's show, I'm business. You put it together, we're show business. And so he teaches the craft of the acting and how to develop characters and break down scripts and get your emotional connection and do the things that an actor needs to do. That's his jam. I am the one who can tell you how to break into the industry, what you need to make it happen. So when we started bringing that together, we started launching some careers through the Actors Studio, through our industry showcase, and bringing the agents back down. We started talking about, we should write a book and we should do that. But it was like, oh yeah, when are we ever going to have time to do something like that, right? So, it was just something that kind of just always sat out there. But then this year, I got involved in a mastermind group and started meeting some incredible people. And, fear was inching its way into the front seat, and I had to kick it back to the back seat and tell it, no, I'm going to do this. And, and took a leap of faith, because I invested money into it by hiring someone who I knew could help me. Once I get all the stuff out, how do I organize it? How do I put it together? How do we deliver this? How do we do that? So, she's talk about this, she's helping us, get it out, asking the questions so we can put the content out there. And then, she's helping organize it and, put it into something that is book worthy.
Is there anything, when you're looking at at passion you have for the industry, is there anything else that you hope to add or continue or be able to do in the future? Or are you happy with having the 3 different companies and being a part of it all?
No, I'm always growing. I'm always changing. I'm always looking for what's next, and I guess right now, I always say I'm focused right now on the exit strategy, but the exit strategy doesn't mean retirement. The exit strategy just means what's next, and, how I elevate out from where I am now so people can come in and even fill this position that I'm in, and I go off and do other things. So, I am starting to move a little bit more, as I'm writing this book. I have a goal of writing another book more on entrepreneurship, which will be much more just my book instead of a book with my husband. But, I call it my mailbox money. I got to start building my business for my mailbox money. So when I'm sitting on the beach somewhere. All my efforts are still paying off, and I can I can live my lifestyle, kind of thing. So, I'm focused on what that, how I'm going to go about earning that mailbox money. The book is a step in that. Probably going to work my way into some consulting and coaching, taking on individuals who need, more help and direction, and whether it be breaking into this industry or just succeeding in life. Being, I'm a firm believer that, you got to manifest what you want. You got to think positive. If you start with being grateful, you can't think about all the other stuff that's going on in your head, because once you fill it with some gratefulness, you just start moving in that grateful manner. If I sat around and thought about all the stuff that sucked, then I would probably just sit here and go, oh my God, there's a lot of stuff that sucks, right? But if I start thinking about all the things that are great, then I start thinking about how I can go be a part of those things, or how I can do my own great things, or how I can take that great thing and make it better. I get very, when I get down in the dumps, I only kind of let myself kind of get there for a little while, and, have a good cry. Everyone needs a good cry. I got some great advice from Henry Winkler, the Fonz. He told me, go scream in your pillow. That was one of the greatest things. That I was meeting with him and James Burrows, who is a famous director. And as I was talking about how do I, make my mark in the industry, me at 23 years old, and meeting with two iconic people that I'm trying to impress and hoping that they're going to make me the star that I always wanted to be, right? That didn't happen. But, they looked at me and goes, oh, make sure you cry in your pillow, or you go, get a punching bag and work the thing, get your frustrations out. And I'm like, that's not what I wanted to hear, but, but now I get it. It's now. At that time I was like, well, that was why am I meeting with you? You're supposed to be my way in, right? I thought I had a way in because my mom knew these people. But they weren't my way in. They weren't my quick fix answer. I had to be that for myself. And I had to learn how to deal with my highs and my lows and still stay the course. You get too low and you stay too low too long, then you don't ever get up and move. You get too high and you're always up there, and you're always looking for that high, and you can't live life high all the time, so you just have to be able to live life and move through it. So that's my my kind of strategy now for living life. So I kind of see that as that's where I'm sure my career will start to move me towards, more in that consulting and coaching, and more what I do now, but on a not so much of the day-to-day. Okay, it's payroll, I got to do payroll right now. And, oh, I got to return that email to make sure that contract goes through.
The final question I'll ask you, for someone that's listening to this interview based on your journey and experience, what tips or advice would you give them to overcome obstacles, accomplish their goals, and rise to the challenge?
That's a great question. Passion. Passion is definitely the center. If you can center yourself around your passion, you will be successful, because when you are working your passion or living your passion, even when things maybe go off track a little while, for a moment or two, or in another direction, your passion will keep you centered. So I'm a firm believer that, and that's what I look for when I hire people, is that passion. I can teach skill. You can teach skill. I can put your hands on it. This is video production. It's not brain surgery. So, in that sense, it's, if you have passion, you bring a little bit of raw talent and interest, I can put your hands on it. You can learn. Never stop learning. That is how you keep rising to the challenge, is you keep learning, keep reaching for something new. The minute you get complacent, then what? Why? There, you have to keep seeking out that new challenge. I tell that to my students every day. What are you doing? Oh, there's nothing for me to do. What do you mean there's nothing for you to do? Go out and find that challenge yourself, look for that, because that's what's going to make you a better person, a better employee, a better entrepreneur, a better wife, a better husband, a better friend. you know when you are consistently trying to always do better, you get to be better. And it's okay when you find a challenge and you think it's your challenge and you start up that hill and you realize, hey, maybe this isn't my purpose or this isn't my jam. It's okay to change your mind, but don't give up. You can change your mind, but don't quit. If this is what you want and this is where you see yourself, you keep going. The entertainment industry is a very tough business. It's very subjective, but I am a firm believer that anyone can work in this industry. You just have to find your place. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, from CPAs to nurses to doctors to janitorial to mailroom people to producers, directors, actors, sound people, writers, secretaries. They're all in the mix. Every industry touches this industry. And so if you want to be in this industry, you just have to find what your jam is and what makes you work. And if you go into that with a passion, you'll love your work and you'll love what you do. You'll find new challenges and you'll keep rising to them.
Diane, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about your rise to the challenge. You're inspiring so many individuals, and we're excited to see what the future looks like for you.
Oh, thank you so much, Alex. It's been a pleasure being here.